This is the wreck of the SS Empire Heritage.
During World War II, Great Britain was fundamentally dependent on its allies.
This is the grave of a sunken ship.
It's as if there's something specific about this area which makes it lethal for shipping.
And how did it end up at the bottom of the ocean?
A German cargo ship slips out of Brazil in the chaos of World War II, carrying something so valuable that when the British Navy closes in, the crew makes a shocking choice. They blow their own ship apart rather than surrender. For 80 years, the SS Minden rested somewhere on the Atlantic floor. Nobody knew what secrets it took down with it. 4 tons of Nazi gold, they said. A fortune pulled from South American banks right as the war erupted. Then, in 2017, British divers found the wreck off Iceland's coast. They found the chest, and what came out has stunned everyone who knows the truth. Because here's the thing, they did find gold, just not the gold the world expected. And what makes this even stranger, the governments involved refused to talk about it. Iceland shut down the site, Britain went silent, and the treasure hunters who pulled it up, they've said almost nothing. So what really sank with the SS Minden? And why is everyone so desperate to keep it quiet? In the first week of September 1939, Europe was tearing itself apart. Germany had invaded Poland, Britain had declared war. And in the middle of this chaos, a German cargo ship named SS Minden quietly left Rio de Janeiro's harbor. The date was September 6th. The ship sailed north through increasingly dangerous waters. No naval escort, no public explanation, just speed and silence. This wasn't normal behavior for a merchant vessel during wartime. Most ships were either grounded or rerouted to avoid conflict zones. But the Minden pushed straight into the Atlantic as if it had orders that couldn't wait. On paper, it was transporting standard commercial cargo. But intelligence circles were already whispering. The route made no sense. The timing was catastrophic. And deep in those whispers was a word that would haunt this story for 8 decades: gold. Then, on September 24th, everything changed. The British Royal Navy spotted the Minden roughly 118 miles southeast of Iceland. HMS Calypso moved in to intercept. Standard wartime procedure: board the ship, inspect the cargo, question the crew. But before the British could get close enough, the German sailors made a decision that would fuel conspiracy theories for generations. They scuttled their own ship. The crew blew open the hull from the inside. Water rushed in. The Minden sank in minutes, dropping to the ocean floor faster than anyone expected, almost like they were trying to erase something. The sailors were pulled from the water, questioned, and eventually sent home. They revealed nothing about what the ship had been carrying. The incident barely made headlines at the time, just another casualty in the early chaos of World War II. But that didn't stop the rumors. According to declassified British naval reports that surfaced decades later, something about the Minden had caught Allied attention before it even left Brazil. Intelligence suggested the ship wasn't carrying ordinary freight. Instead, it was allegedly transporting gold, possibly 4 tons of it. Now here's where it gets interesting. Documents uncovered in the 1990s pointed to suspicious transactions between Banco Germanico and Dresdner Bank. Banco Germanico was a German-controlled financial institution operating in South America. Dresdner Bank had deep, well-documented ties to the Nazi government. The theory goes like this. As war approached, the Nazi regime began quietly pulling liquid assets from overseas holdings. Brazil, with its mix of European immigrants and German business interests, was the perfect source. The money was being funneled back to Berlin through both legal channels and shadow networks, and one name kept appearing in those classified files: SS Minden. But here's what makes the scuttling even more suspicious. Some wartime intelligence analysts believe the order came from the highest levels in Berlin, possibly Hitler himself. The command was clear: do not let the cargo fall into British hands. Think about that for a second. It's one thing to lose a ship to enemy fire or bad weather. It's another thing entirely to blow up your own vessel in a remote stretch of ocean 3 weeks into the war. That kind of decision suggests the cargo was worth more than the ship itself, and the timing couldn't have been worse for Germany. September 1939 was barely 3 weeks into the conflict. At that point, Germany had already attacked Poland. Britain had responded. The oceans were becoming deadly territory. The Reich was desperate to secure its finances before sanctions, seizures, and naval blockades shut everything down. Smuggling gold out of neutral Brazil in those early weeks would have made perfect strategic sense. There's also the question of why the ship left from Rio de Janeiro at all. Brazil wasn't at war with Germany. In fact, Brazil didn't enter World War II until years later. It was neutral ground, a safe harbor for intelligence operations and quiet financial arrangements. The perfect place for moving large sums without attracting attention. From that angle, the Minden wasn't just a cargo ship, it was a ghost runner, a financial courier cloaked in maritime anonymity, carrying wealth that Germany couldn't afford to lose. After the sinking, the story faded. Survivors aged, the ocean shifted, and the exact coordinates of the wreck were lost to time. But the theory never died. It lingered in maritime circles, in treasure-hunting forums, and buried in the files of European intelligence agencies. The logic was simple. 4 tons of gold don't just disappear. If it wasn't offloaded before the scuttling, and it wasn't recovered by the British, then it had to still be down there, waiting. And for nearly 80 years, that's exactly where it stayed. Hidden beneath the cold Atlantic, slowly becoming one of the most enduring mysteries of World War II, until technology finally caught up with the legend. By the time 2017 rolled around, the SS Minden had been resting at the bottom of the Atlantic for nearly 8 decades, forgotten by most, romanticized by a few. But that was about to change. A British salvage company called Advanced Marine Services decided to do what no one else had successfully managed: find the wreck, and more importantly, retrieve what was believed to be hidden inside. The mission began quietly. Using advanced sonar equipment and submersible drones, the team scanned a remote patch of ocean roughly 120 miles southeast of Iceland. They were operating from a vessel named Seabed Worker, combing through coordinates that matched old wartime accounts. And then their equipment picked up something: a sunken cargo ship, largely intact, right where the record said it would be. But that wasn't the most interesting part. According to leaked documents and sources close to the operation, the sonar had detected what looked like a sealed rectangular container still resting deep within the wreckage. The kind of container you wouldn't use for mail or machinery, the kind you'd use for something extremely valuable. Speculation exploded across treasure-hunting circles. Was this the chest, the one that had kept the legend alive for 80 years? But they weren't alone for long. Icelandic authorities noticed unusual vessel activity within their exclusive economic zone. And while the site was technically in international waters, Iceland's EEZ gave the country legal control over underwater operations within 200 nautical miles of its coast. Advanced Marine Services hadn't gone through the proper channels. On April 14, 2017, Iceland's Coast Guard boarded the Seabed Worker. The British team was ordered to halt all operations immediately. News broke within hours. Headlines went wild. Nazi gold ship found. Iceland blocks British treasure hunt. Sunken World War II mystery reopened. Iceland's Environment Agency confirmed that the group had failed to obtain necessary research and recovery permits. Investigations began into whether environmental laws had been violated. The British company pushed back hard. They submitted formal applications requesting permission to retrieve what they described as a non-hazardous chest of unknown contents. Under maritime law, they argued they had salvage rights as the discoverers of the wreck. But Iceland wasn't about to hand over control. The country had grown increasingly protective of sites within its economic zone, especially when historical artifacts or valuable resources were involved. They'd seen too many foreign teams exploit underwater locations without proper oversight. Later that year, Iceland issued a temporary permit. It allowed continued research on the wreck through May 2018. But there was one critical restriction: absolutely no recovery attempts until further review. That didn't stop the team from trying. During the permitted window, a second expedition was launched. And once again, the team returned with complete silence. No photos, no press conference, no confirmation of what they'd found. Then came a third trip in July 2018. This one lasted just 3 days. What happened during those 72 hours remains one of the biggest question marks in the entire story. According to Icelandic officials, a report was submitted afterward, stating that no items of value had been recovered. But skeptics weren't buying it. If nothing was found, why had the team returned a third time? Why all the secrecy? Why the rushed timeline? And what exactly was inside that container the sonar had detected? Here's where things get even stranger. Shortly after that final dive, Iceland quietly rejected all future salvage requests around the site. The location that had been buzzing with activity suddenly became completely off-limits. No explanation, no public statement, just a door slammed shut. Multiple reports, some more credible than others, began claiming that the sealed container had been retrieved, quietly, discreetly, and possibly without full disclosure to authorities. Whether that's true or just another layer of conspiracy is still up for debate. But one thing became clear: someone found something down there, something significant enough to bring an 80-year-old ghost ship back into the global spotlight. And whatever it was, the people involved didn't want the world to know about it. In the final months of 2018, something shifted. No official announcements, no dramatic press releases, just whispers spreading through a handful of maritime insiders who'd been following the Minden story for years. The sealed container had allegedly been brought to the surface, and what was inside has only deepened the mystery. According to sources close to the salvage operation who spoke on condition of anonymity, the object retrieved during that final dive in July 2018 was real, not a myth, not sonar interference. A physical chest pulled from the wreckage, opened, and analyzed. Inside were gold bars, heavily corroded, covered in decades of seawater damage, but unmistakably gold. The markings, though partially obscured by corrosion, allegedly matched records from Banco Germanico, the same South American financial institution that had been linked to German interests in Brazil before the war. So yes, the Nazi gold on SS Minden was found after 80 years. But here's the kicker: it's not what we thought. For nearly 8 decades, the legend spoke of 4 tons of Nazi gold. That number was repeated so often in treasure hunting circles and historical forums that it became accepted as fact. 4 tons, a staggering fortune worth hundreds of millions today. What was actually found? A few dozen bars at most. Valuable, sure, but nowhere near the mountain of wealth that had fueled the legend for generations. And it gets worse. The rest of the container's contents only raised more questions. Sources described degraded bundles of South American currency, rotted shipping ledgers, documents written in both German and Portuguese, barely legible after 80 years underwater. One diver allegedly remarked that the chest looked like it had been packed in a hurry, not the careful, methodical work of a well-planned operation. It suggested panic, desperation. Now here's where the story splits into uncomfortable territory. Was this all that was ever on board the Minden? Was it a decoy meant to throw off anyone who came looking? Could more gold have been secretly offloaded before the ship was scuttled? Or did the rest of it simply vanish into the Atlantic, scattered across the ocean floor where no one will ever find it? None of these questions have clear answers, and that's what makes this discovery so haunting. For 80 years, people operated on a simple assumption. Either the gold was there or it wasn't. But now, we're stuck in uncomfortable middle ground. The gold was there, just not the gold everyone spent decades fantasizing about. Not the treasure that could rewrite World War II financial history. Not the fortune that would make headlines around the world. What they found was real, but incomplete. Valuable, but underwhelming. And most disturbingly, it raises the possibility that the legend itself was built on exaggeration or misinformation. Icelandic authorities have stayed almost completely silent on the matter. Their last official statement declared that nothing of significant value had been recovered from the wreck. But here's what happened next. Shortly after that final dive, all further salvage requests around the site were quietly rejected. No explanation given. The location that had been the center of international attention suddenly became forbidden territory. So the find remains officially unacknowledged in the public record. But according to reports from those close to the operation, the gold was absolutely there. It just wasn't the gold that people had built entire theories around. It wasn't the Nazi war chest that would confirm decades of speculation. What emerged after 80 years was something far more ambiguous. Real, yes, but frustratingly incomplete. And that might be the most unsettling part of this entire story. The Nazi gold on SS Minden has been found after 80 years. But instead of answering the questions that have haunted treasure hunters and historians for generations, it's created entirely new ones. If this was only a partial cache, where's the rest? If the operation was rushed and incomplete, what got left behind? And if the chest was deliberately planted as misdirection, what was the Minden really carrying? Every answer just opens 3 more questions. With reports circulating that the Nazi gold on SS Minden was actually found after 80 years, a new and incredibly messy question immediately surfaced. Who does it belong to? Under maritime law, salvage cases are notoriously complicated. In many situations, whoever recovers treasure from a sunken vessel is entitled to some kind of reward, sometimes even full ownership, provided the original owners can't be identified or don't come forward. But when it comes to World War II-era wrecks, nothing is ever that simple. First, there's Iceland. The SS Minden went down outside Iceland's territorial waters, but it lies squarely within the country's exclusive economic zone. That gives Iceland significant legal control over what can and cannot be removed from the seafloor in that area. This isn't just a technicality. It means Iceland can regulate exploration, approve or deny permits, and even seize any recovered artifacts if they're deemed culturally or environmentally significant. From the very beginning, Iceland made its position clear: no treasure hunting without full transparency. When Advanced Marine Services allegedly retrieved the sealed container in 2018, They were operating under a temporary research permit. That permit did not authorize recovery. It only allowed them to study the wreck. Yet according to reports, a chest was recovered anyway. Iceland has never publicly confirmed whether that actually happened. But shortly after that final dive, the country abruptly shut down the case. No further permits were granted, and the exact status of the wreck became a quiet matter of national jurisdiction. Then there's the issue of where the gold originally came from. If the bars really do carry stamps from pre-war South American banks, particularly institutions once operated by German nationals in Brazil, then the ownership question becomes impossibly tangled. Does Germany have a claim? What about Brazil? The banks no longer exist in their original form, so do their corporate successors have rights? Or does the whole thing fall under laws of abandonment and finders' rights? Some legal experts argue that even if the gold had Nazi connections, Germany likely forfeited any ownership after the war ended. Others point to international agreements like the 1954 Hague Convention, which protects cultural property removed from occupied countries during wartime. That means if the gold was originally looted from somewhere else, the claim could come from yet another country entirely. But here's the most troubling part. Why hasn't anyone stepped forward to claim it? If the gold was truly recovered in 2018, why didn't Advanced Marine Services announce it? Why haven't any governments issued public statements? Why hasn't the gold appeared in court filings, been moved to a museum, or placed in a public trust? Some believe it's because the discovery violated Iceland's salvage restrictions. Revealing it now would open a flood of legal and diplomatic nightmares that everyone involved wants to avoid. Others suggest the operation was quietly brokered behind closed doors, a deal struck to suppress public knowledge in exchange for some kind of private settlement. That kind of secrecy only fuels more speculation. There are whispers that the gold is already back in the United Kingdom, sitting in a private vault under legal review. Others claim it never left Iceland and is being quietly held by authorities until ownership can be determined. And then there's the most disturbing theory of all, that the gold was intentionally split up, some removed, some left behind. That way, no single entity would have to take full legal responsibility for what was found. One thing is absolutely certain. Treasure of this nature rarely brings clean endings. It invites disputes, lawsuits, historical claims, political tension. The very idea of Nazi gold still stirs deep emotions around the world. To some, it's a symbol of stolen wealth and crimes that can never be fully repaid. To others, it's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery hidden beneath layers of war, secrecy, and salt water. But perhaps the most unsettling possibility is this. What if the gold was never meant to be found in the first place? What if its discovery, after all these years, only creates more problems than it solves? Because in the story of the SS Minden, even when something is finally uncovered, nothing feels entirely resolved. The facts remain scattered. The truth is still submerged in contradictions and silence. And the questions just keep multiplying. Even with reports claiming the Nazi gold on SS Minden was found after 80 years, the story refuses to settle into anything resembling closure. The facts, what little there are, remain frustratingly scattered. The truth is still buried under layers of secrecy, contradictions, and official silence. If the chest was actually recovered, as insiders suggest, then why has there been no public confirmation? Why hasn't a single government, bank, or museum stepped forward with a formal claim? And most strangely, why has the wreck itself been placed in what feels like a quiet lockdown, with Iceland shutting down all further exploration? Some say the answers are tied up in diplomatic sensitivity. that the governments involved, whether directly or indirectly, would rather keep the legend ambiguous than ignite fresh ownership disputes that could drag on for years. Others believe the recovery was intentionally kept off the books, either to avoid public backlash or to quietly return the contents to private hands without the scrutiny that would come with an official announcement. Then there's the possibility that the reports were exaggerated, that what was found was far less significant than the legend suggested, something mundane enough that it didn't warrant the global attention everyone expected. But even that wouldn't undo the legend's power, because the SS Minden has evolved into something bigger than a sunken ship. It's become a symbol of how myth and history intertwine. A case study in how a single wartime event, barely noted in 1939, can grow into a sprawling mystery that spans continents and generations. It's the ambiguity that keeps people searching. The idea that maybe, just maybe, the real treasure is still down there. That the recovered chest was only part of the story. That the rest of the gold, if it ever existed, is still hidden beneath the sand and steel of the wreck, waiting for someone brave enough or crazy enough to try again. Because here's the thing about legends like this: they don't end with a single discovery. They evolve, they adapt, they refuse to die. Even if every single bar of gold was pulled from that wreck in 2018, the story would still persist. Because treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists would always wonder if there was more, if the operation missed something, if another container is still buried deeper in the hull. And in a way, that's exactly what makes the SS Minden so compelling. It's not just about the gold anymore. It's about the chase, the secrecy, the unanswered questions that pile up faster than anyone can address them. So whether the Nazi gold on SS Minden was truly found after 80 years or not, one fact remains undeniable. It's not what we thought. And that simple truth, or lie, depending on who you ask, is what will keep divers searching, governments watching, and storytellers spinning new theories for years to come. The wreck still rests somewhere on the cold Atlantic floor. Iceland still guards its coordinates. And the mystery? It's as alive today as it was in 1939, when the crew made the fateful decision to blow their own ship apart, rather than let the British see what was inside. Maybe the gold is gone. Maybe it was never there in the quantities we imagined. Or maybe it's still waiting in the dark, just out of reach, daring someone to come looking one more time. What do you think really happened? Was the gold found and quietly covered up by governments trying to avoid controversy? Or is the real treasure still lying on the ocean floor, waiting for the right technology and the right team to finally bring it to the surface? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.